something really strange happened this week. You see, Sony announced one of the most controversial decisions in PlayStation history. And as a result, gamers got super pissed off. Social media understandably exploded, and gamers were also saying they wanted to boycott PlayStation and all that. But then there's actually something else that kind of caught my eye here. You see, Sony's stock actually went up. Now, before we go any further, I'm not saying that Sony's stock rose only because of the digital-only announcement that Sony had made. Sony announced several things that day, including a major share buyback. And you know how markets react to an entire package of news, not just one headline in isolation. But you see, the entire thing just raises a fascinating question. Like, I don't get, why would Wall Street look at this news and announcement and smile, but then the rest of us look at the exact same news and we just see disaster? How does that work? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, at first, I had assumed that Sony simply misread the room, right? I mean, gamers clearly hated the idea, and normally, companies usually backtrack when this kind of thing actually happens, right? But Sony didn't. Which kind of got me thinking, what does Sony know that the rest of us actually don't? I mean, the fact that they haven't even replied since this announcement was made is kind of, I'm not gonna say shocking, but it's super suspicious. Well, you see, I actually found this one number that kind of just blew my mind and kind of just provided a deeper perspective on this entire issue. You see, about 80% of PlayStation's full game sales are digital. Yeah, like you heard that right. 80%. Not 20, not 10, not 50. 80% of PlayStation's full sales are digital. This is an extremely scary statistic because it just basically tells us that Sony is operating, not necessarily betting on the future, but they're actually operating on what's happening presently as we speak. I mean, I want you to think about how crazy this actually is. If 8 out of every 10 people are already just pressing download, tell me, why would Sony keep manufacturing discs? Honest question, why would they? Would you, if you're in Sony's position? Would you continue printing covers? Would you continue shipping millions of plastic boxes around the world? Would you keep splitting revenue and sharing it amongst retailers? It seems that from Sony's perspective, physical games have quietly become an expense to them. And look, I'm not a PlayStation sympathizer or a shill. There are many practices that are anti-consumer that Sony does, which I'm not a fan of. What I'm just trying to do right now is give you guys a general understanding of the situation that's actually on the ground right now. So then you pair that with what happened with Sony's stock price rising, right? And suddenly it doesn't necessarily look as strange as it did before. Now again, I'm not saying that investors only reacted because of this decision, not at all. But if you were an investor, don't you think that lower manufacturing costs and higher digital margins and more customers buying through PlayStation Store would be exactly the kind of thing that you'd want to hear? And the funny thing is, this is actually where it kind of started to feel full circle for me here. Like, Sony didn't make this decision because gamers suddenly stopped caring about physical games or physical media. I think the most painful realization in this story is the fact that Sony made this decision because enough of us had already stopped buying or caring about physical media. And it's really painful, or I would say it kind of sucks, knowing that the reason that we may be where we are today, with Sony making what decisions they're making, is actually because it's kind of our fault, and almost as if we contributed to this problem. Now, even if that is the case, what makes physical media still stand out is the fact that physical media isn't just about nostalgia. It's proof of ownership. It allows you, or it allowed you, to buy used and sell later, borrow a friend, or keep them on your shelf for 20 plus years. All of these reasons go to show and prove that physical media will always be superior at the end of the day, even if the market says we're going for digital. Because one of the most important things that digital cannot give you is proof of ownership. It's just a license. So I understand where Sony is coming from, but at the same time, I understand where the grievance of most gamers is also coming from. And both sides are equally valid. And the other funny thing that I can't stop noticing is the fact that movies went from physical to streaming, right? And music went from CDs to Spotify. And most software has moved from ownership to subscriptions. And it seems as though gaming is also joining the rat race. But what if that's actually the real story behind this entire thing? Not that Sony is ending physical games, not even the fact that investors seem happy with this decision, but that the battle over ownership may have ended long before this announcement ever came to pass. Because if 80% of PlayStation sales are already digital, then can we not say that Sony isn't forcing anyone to be buying physical media? They're simply just consolidating the fact that gamers have chosen that digital is what they opt for over physical media. Sony just basically looked at the numbers and decided from the numbers that they could afford to make this move. And whether we like it or not, that changes how each and every single publisher from now on will make their decisions going forward. And the uncomfortable truth or fact at the heart of the matter is the fact that Sony may not necessarily have decided or voted to end physical games because enough of us had already voted with our wallets, one download at a time.